The massive alien ship hung in space like a metal mountain. Inside its gleaming halls, Kethaval studied the data screens with growing confidence. For 3 years, the Zephyrian Alliance had watched the blue planet called Earth. They had seen the humans hunt, fight, and kill. The conclusion was simple. Humans were predators, nothing more. Primitive but dangerous, Kethaval told the Council. They use crude weapons and basic tactics. Their aggression is high, but their technology is weak. We can control them easily. The other Council members nodded. They had dealt with predator species before. The key was showing strength early and keeping them in line. Predators respected power and feared superior force. It was always the same pattern. Kethaval watched the human ship approach on the main screen. The vessel looked small and harmless compared to their war cruisers. The humans called it New Horizon. How typical of a young species to choose such a hopeful name. They would learn soon enough that the galaxy was not a place for dreamers. The human delegation would arrive in 1 hour. Kethaval had prepared a demonstration of Zephyrian technology to establish dominance. Holographic displays would show their weapons, their ships, their vast empire. The humans would see their place in the order of things. On the human ship, Kate Morrison checked her uniform one last time. As the lead diplomat, she carried the hopes of her entire species. This first meeting would shape humanity's future among the stars. She had studied every piece of information about the Zephyrians, learning their customs and protocols. Nervous? Asked Ben Collins, the cultural attaché. He was a tall man with kind eyes who spoke 7 Earth languages fluently. His job was to help bridge the gap between human and alien thinking. Not nervous, Kate replied. Careful. We get one chance to make a good first impression. Behind them, the security detail made final preparations. These were not soldiers in the traditional sense. They were trained negotiation specialists, chosen for their calm minds and quick thinking. Their leader was a former police detective named Steve Murphy. His team included Lisa Hayes, a crisis counselor, and Mike Turner, a former firefighter who now worked in disaster response. The New Horizon docked with the alien ship. Kate took a deep breath and stepped forward. The airlock opened with a soft hiss and she got her first look at real aliens. The Zephyrians were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. They moved with fluid grace like dancers. Their leader, who introduced himself as Kethaval, spoke perfect English through a translation device. Welcome to our vessel, Kethaval said. His voice was cold and formal. You are the representatives of the human predator species. Kate noticed the word choice but kept her expression neutral. We are honored to meet you. Humanity looks forward to peaceful relations with the Zephyrian Alliance. Kethaval led them through the ship's corridors. The walls were covered with displays showing Zephyrian technology. Massive warships firing energy weapons, cities that floated in space, worlds transformed by alien engineering. The message was clear. We are powerful, you are not. They entered a large chamber where other council members waited. The room was designed to impress with a high ceiling and dramatic lighting. The aliens took their seats on a raised platform, looking down at the human delegation. Before we begin formal talks, Kethaval announced, we will demonstrate the power of the Alliance. You must understand your position in the galaxy. The lights dimmed. Holographic images filled the air above them. Kate watched ships the size of cities destroying asteroids with single shots. She saw alien armies conquering world after world. The display was meant to frighten, to show humanity how small and weak they were compared to the great powers of space. But something went wrong. One of the holographic projectors sparked and began to smoke. The device was mounted high on the wall directly above where the alien council sat. Sparks showered down, and Kate heard a sharp crack as the heavy projector broke free from its mounting. Time seemed to slow. The massive device fell toward the aliens below. They looked up in shock, too surprised to move. In seconds, the projector would crush several council members. Steve Murphy moved first. The security chief launched himself forward, shouting, "Move." His team reacted instantly. Lisa Hayes grabbed the nearest alien and pulled him aside. Mike Turner dove toward another, tackling him out of the way. Ben Collins pushed a third alien to safety. Kate herself reached for Kethaval, pulling the surprised researcher backward just as the heavy projector crashed to the floor where he had been sitting. The device shattered into pieces, sending metal fragments flying. For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Then the aliens began to speak rapidly in their own language. Kate couldn't understand the words, but she could hear the shock and confusion in their voices. Kethaval stared at the humans who had just saved his life. His large eyes were wide with surprise. You protected us," he said slowly. "Why, we were showing you our power. We were establishing dominance." Steve Murphy helped brush debris from the aliens' clothing. "That's what we do," he said simply. "Someone's in danger, we help." Doesn't matter who they are. The other humans were checking on the aliens they had rescued. Lisa Hayes was asking if anyone was hurt. Mike Turner was helping an elderly council member to his feet. No one was treating this as a big deal. They had seen danger and reacted to stop it. Nothing more complicated than that. Kethaval looked around the chamber. These humans had just watched a display of overwhelming force. They should have been intimidated, focused on their own survival. Instead, when danger appeared, their first instinct was to protect strangers, aliens who had been trying to frighten them. "I do not understand," Kethaval said to Kate. "Your species files indicate you are predators. Predators think of themselves first. They take what they want by force. This behavior does not match our data," Kate smiled. "Maybe your data is incomplete. Humans are complicated. We can be dangerous when we need to be, but that's not all we are." The other council members were gathering around, speaking in hushed tones. They kept looking at the humans with new expressions. The fear and suspicion were still there, but now there was something else. Curiosity. Confusion. These predators had acted like protectors. Kethaval made a decision. "We will postpone the formal negotiations. I believe we need to study your species more carefully before we proceed." As the human delegation was escorted to guest quarters, Kethaval remained in the damaged chamber. He stared at the broken projector and replayed the scene in his mind. In all his years studying predator species, he had never seen behavior like this. Perhaps the humans were more than simple predators. Perhaps they were something the galaxy had never encountered before. The thought was both fascinating and terrifying. He would need to revise his files. This first contact was not going according to plan. 3 days after the incident in the council chamber, Dr. Lisa Carter stood before the assembled Zephyrian Alliance. The wildlife biologist from Montana had been invited to explain humanity's relationship with nature. She carried a small device containing videos and data that would change everything the aliens thought they knew about human predators. Kethaval introduced her to the council. Since the accident, he had been asking questions about human behavior that didn't fit his predator model. The humans had been helpful, almost eager to explain themselves. It was strange behavior for a species that should be trying to appear strong and dangerous. "Dr. Carter," Kethaval said, "please help us understand. Your people hunt and kill other creatures for food and sport. This confirms you are predators. But your actions 3 days ago suggest something different. Explain this contradiction." Lisa activated her device and images filled the air above them. The first showed a vast forest filled with deer, elk, and other animals. "This is Yellowstone National Park," she began. 100 years ago, humans nearly destroyed it. We killed too many predators and the ecosystem collapsed." The aliens leaned forward, interested. This sounded more like the predator behavior they expected. "But then we did something that surprised even us," Lisa continued. "We brought back the wolves." The next image showed a pack of wolves running through snow. "We reintroduced the top predator to restore balance. Humans gave up our position as the only hunters in that area. We shared it with creatures that could kill us." Council member Vexitar spoke up. "This makes no sense. Why would a predator species give up territory to competitors?" "Because we learned something important," Lisa said. "Being the best predator isn't about killing everything. It's about understanding the balance. True predators don't destroy their hunting grounds." She showed them videos of American hunters in action. But these weren't the violent scenes the aliens expected. Instead, they saw humans sitting motionless for hours, studying animal tracks, learning migration patterns. They watched hunters pass up easy shots because the target was too young or because the season was closed. "Meet Jake Sullivan," Lisa said as a new video began. The screen showed a bearded man in camouflage sitting in a tree stand at dawn. He's a former Marine who now guides hunting trips in Alaska. The video followed Jake as he tracked a massive elk through dense forest. The alien council watched him read signs in the dirt, predict the animal's path, and position himself perfectly for a clean shot. But when the moment came, Jake lowered his rifle. "Why did he not fire?" demanded another council member. "The target was perfect." "Because the elk was a breeding male during mating season," Lisa explained. Jake followed the code. You don't take the strongest animals when they're needed to keep the species healthy. The aliens exchanged confused glances. In their experience, predators always took the easiest prey. The old, the young, the weak. Taking the strongest required more skill and effort. Why would humans make hunting harder for themselves? Lisa showed them more examples. Hunters who spent their own money to buy licenses that funded wildlife conservation. Tracking experts who helped scientists study endangered species. Game wardens who arrested poachers trying to take animals illegally. This is Tony Rodriguez, she said, showing a man in a ranger uniform. He was a staff sergeant in the army. Now he protects animals from illegal hunters. Former predators protecting prey from other predators. Vextar was clearly struggling with these concepts. But if your hunters limit themselves, follow rules, protect their prey, what is the point of hunting? Jake Sullivan himself answered that question. Lisa had brought him along via video link from Alaska. His weathered face appeared on the screen and he spoke directly to the alien council. The point isn't the killing, Jake said in his deep, calm voice. Any fool with a gun can kill something. The challenge is doing it right. Reading the land. Understanding the animals. Making a clean shot that doesn't cause suffering. It's about becoming part of the natural system, not dominating it. He paused, looking directly into the camera. A real hunter doesn't just take life. He respects it. Every animal I've taken, I've used completely. The meat feeds my family. The hide becomes clothing. Nothing is wasted. And for every animal I take, I help protect 100 others through conservation work. The aliens were silent. This was not predator behavior as they understood it. Predators competed. They didn't cooperate. They took what they wanted without thought for tomorrow. Kethval asked the question that was troubling them all. If humans are such efficient predators, why do you handicap yourselves with rules and limits? Lisa smiled. Because we learned something important thousands of years ago. The best way to stay at the top of the food chain is to make sure there's always a food chain to be on top of. She showed them historical data. Native American tribes that moved their hunting grounds to prevent overhunting. European societies that created the first game laws. Modern conservation efforts that had brought dozens of species back from near extinction. We realized that being apex predators came with responsibility, Lisa continued. We had the power to destroy entire ecosystems, but we also had the intelligence to choose not to. That choice is what makes us different. Jake's voice came through the speakers again. Where I hunt in Alaska, there are brown bears that could kill me with one swipe. But they don't hunt me and I don't hunt them unless one becomes dangerous. We share the territory because we both understand the rules. What rules? Kethval asked. Don't take more than you need. Don't hunt when animals are vulnerable. Protect the young and the breeding stock. Fight only when necessary. And always remember that being strong means knowing when not to use your strength. The alien council sat in stunned silence. They had spent decades categorizing predator species across the galaxy. All followed the same basic patterns. Take what you can, when you can, as much as you can. Cooperation was temporary and based on immediate benefit, but humans had developed something unprecedented. They had rules that went against their immediate interests. They chose restraint when they could choose dominance. They protected their prey species instead of exterminating them. Dr. Amy Foster, the behavioral specialist, had been watching the alien reactions carefully. She spoke up for the first time. I think you're starting to understand. Humans aren't just predators. We're predators who chose to become something more. Vextar leaned forward. More? What do you mean? Guardians, Amy said simply. We learned that the strongest predator isn't the one who kills everything. It's the one who kills only what's necessary and protects everything else. Kethval was updating his files in real time. Every assumption about human behavior was being challenged. These weren't primitive, aggressive predators. They were something the galaxy had never seen before. Apex predators with a conscience. As the presentation ended, Jake Sullivan offered one final thought. You want to know what makes a human hunter dangerous? It's not our weapons or our technology. It's that we can track you for days without you knowing we're there. We can predict where you'll be and when you'll be there. We can strike from any range and any weather on any terrain. The aliens shifted uncomfortably. This sounded more like the threat assessment they expected. But here's the thing, Jake continued with a slight smile. We can do all that and we can also choose not to. We can track something for days and then walk away because it's not the right time or the right target. That choice, that restraint, that's what makes us apex predators. As the human delegation left the chamber, Kethval stared at his updated files. Humans weren't just predators. They were predators with ethics, hunters with honor, killers with conscience. For the first time in his career, he didn't know how to classify a species, and that terrified him more than any weapon or warship ever could. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was called when long-range sensors detected ships moving toward the Kepler 442 system. The Hegemony Collective, a militant faction that had broken away from the main alliance years ago, was expanding into new territory. What made this different was that Kepler 442 was home to the Tender, a peaceful species that had barely discovered fire. Captain Ryan Hayes of the human exploration vessel Pathfinder stood before the council with Dr. Amy Foster at his side. They had been monitoring the situation for weeks, hoping for a diplomatic solution. The Hegemony ships were 3 days away from Tender space. The Hegemony has ignored all communication attempts, Ryan reported. They're not interested in negotiation. Their pattern is always the same. Arrive, claim the system, remove any obstacles. Kethval studied the tactical displays. The Tender cannot defend themselves. They have no weapons, no space travel, no concept of interstellar war. The Hegemony will sweep them aside like insects. Dr. Foster spoke up. We've been studying the Tender for months. They're remarkable. They've developed art, music, and complex social structures without any aggression. They've never even had a war among their own kind, which makes them useless, said Vextar bluntly. They cannot fight, so they will be conquered. It is the natural order. Ryan's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. We're requesting permission to establish a protective zone around Kepler 442. The Tender deserve a chance to develop without interference. The council debated for hours. Some members supported the human proposal, but others argued that intervention would set a dangerous precedent. While they talked, the Hegemony fleet moved closer to its target. Finally, Kethval delivered the council's decision. We cannot act without unanimous agreement. The vote was close but insufficient. The Hegemony claims are technically legal under current galactic law. Ryan felt something cold settle in his stomach. So you're just going to let them destroy an entire peaceful civilization? We are sorry, Kethval said, and he genuinely seemed to mean it. But the law is clear. We cannot interfere with legitimate territorial expansion. Dr. Foster watched the human captain's face change. The polite diplomatic expression was gone. Something harder took its place. She had seen this transformation before during her studies of human behavior. It was what happened when cooperation failed and other instincts took over. I understand, Ryan said quietly. Thank you for your time. He turned and walked out with Dr. Foster following. Behind them, the Alien Council continued debating legal procedures and territorial rights. They had given the Hegemony a green light to commit genocide, and they were discussing the paperwork. Back on the Pathfinder, Ryan called his senior staff together. The ship's crew was small but highly skilled. There was Megan Price, the intelligence specialist who could hack any system ever built. Chris Martinez, the survival expert who had grown up hunting in the mountains of Colorado. Tony Rodriguez, who had left his job as a park ranger to explore the stars. And Dr. Foster, who understood alien psychology better than anyone. The council won't act, Ryan announced. The Hegemony will reach Tender space in 72 hours. After that, it's over. Megan looked up from her datapad. Sir, we're one ship against a fleet. The Hegemony has 12 vessels, including 3 heavy cruisers. We can't fight them directly. Who said anything about fighting? Ryan asked with a thin smile. Tony Rodriguez understood first. He had spent years tracking poachers through wilderness areas, learning to think like his quarry. We're not going to fight them. We're going to hunt them. Chris Martinez nodded slowly. They're expecting a battle. Ships lined up, shooting at each other in space. They're not expecting to be stalked. Dr. Foster felt a chill run down her spine. She was watching the transformation Kethval had described in his reports. These humans were shifting from diplomats to predators, but in a way that was controlled and purposeful. Megan, I need everything you can find on Hegemony tactics, ship configurations, and command structure, Ryan ordered. Chris, start working on the system survey data. I want to know every asteroid, every gas giant, every place a ship could hide. Tony, you're our tracker. I need you to predict where they'll go and when. Think like you're following a herd of animals through familiar territory. The crew scattered to their tasks. Dr. Foster stayed behind, studying the captain's face. "What are you planning, Ryan?" "The hegemony thinks this will be easy," he said. "Show up, intimidate the locals, claim the territory. They're not expecting resistance because the tender can't fight back. But we can." Ryan's smile was cold. "We can do something better than fight. We can make them afraid." The Pathfinder reached the Kepler 442 system 18 hours before the hegemony fleet. It was a beautiful system with a yellow star and 7 planets. The tender lived on the 3rd planet, a world of green forests and blue oceans that reminded the humans of Earth. Chris Martinez had identified dozens of hiding spots among the asteroids and small moons. The Pathfinder was designed for exploration, which meant it was fast, quiet, and hard to detect. Against a military fleet, those advantages were more important than heavy weapons. Megan Price had worked through the night, analyzing hegemony communication protocols and command structures. "They use a hierarchical system," she reported. "All decisions come from the flagship. If we can isolate the commander from his fleet, the others will be confused and vulnerable." Tony Rodriguez had been studying the approach vectors. "They'll come in fast and aggressive straight toward the planet. No scouting, no caution. They don't expect trouble." Dr. Foster monitored alien communications from around the galaxy. Word was spreading that the hegemony was about to claim another system. Some species were worried, but most seemed resigned to it. This was how things worked in space. The strong took what they wanted, but they hadn't counted on humans getting involved. The hegemony fleet dropped out of hyperspace exactly when Tony predicted. 12 ships in tight formation, broadcasting demands for immediate surrender. Their message to the tender was simple: submit or be destroyed. The tender, who had no idea what was happening, continued their peaceful lives on the planet below. "Here we go," Ryan said softly. "Megan, start the electronic interference. Chris, take us into the asteroid field. Tony, track the flagship's movements." The Pathfinder vanished into the rocky maze surrounding the system's outer planets. On long-range sensors, the hegemony fleet looked like a pack of wolves approaching a helpless rabbit. But the wolves didn't know they were being watched. What happened next would become legendary among the human space services. Using skills learned from generations of hunters and trackers, the crew of one small ship began to stalk an entire fleet. They started with psychological warfare. Megan hacked into hegemony communications and planted false sensor readings. Ships started reporting contacts that disappeared when investigated. Crews became jumpy, seeing threats everywhere. Chris used his knowledge of asteroid movement to predict where the hegemony ships would patrol. The Pathfinder shadowed them from behind rocks and ice, always staying just out of sight. Sometimes crew members glimpsed something on their sensors, but when they looked directly, nothing was there. Tony studied the fleet's behavior patterns like he would study animal tracks. He learned which ships were nervous, which commanders were aggressive, which crews were getting tired. He could predict their movements hours in advance. The hegemony commander, War Leader Grix, was growing frustrated. His fleet was jumping at shadows. His communications were filled with false alarms and equipment malfunctions. Something was wrong, but he couldn't identify the threat. Dr. Foster monitored the enemy's stress levels through their communications. She could hear the growing fear in their voices. These were soldiers who had conquered dozens of worlds without resistance. Now they were being hunted by an invisible enemy that struck without warning and vanished without a trace. The humans were doing what humans did best: persistence hunting. They were wearing down their prey through constant pressure, making them afraid, making them tired, making them make mistakes. And the hegemony was starting to make mistakes. The first ship was lost when its captain, spooked by another false contact, turned too sharply in the asteroid field and struck a hidden rock. The second was disabled when Megan used their own navigation systems against them, sending a cruiser into a gas giant's radiation field. By the end of the second day, the hegemony fleet was scattered, demoralized, and jumping at shadows. They had come to claim an easy prize and found themselves being stalked by ghosts. War Leader Grix finally understood what he was facing. This wasn't a battle. It was a hunt, and his fleet had become the prey. War Leader Grix made the worst possible decision. Frustrated by 2 days of being hunted through the asteroid fields, he ordered his remaining ships to attack the tender homeworld directly. If he couldn't find the humans stalking his fleet, he would force them to come to him by threatening innocent civilians. The bombardment began at dawn on the third day. Energy beams struck the planet's surface, destroying forests and cities. The tender, still not understanding what was happening, could only flee in terror as their peaceful world burned around them. On the Pathfinder, Captain Ryan Hayes watched the destruction with cold fury. Dr. Foster had never seen him like this. The diplomatic mask was completely gone now, replaced by something that made her take a step back. "They just made this personal," Ryan said quietly. The transformation spread through the crew. Megan Price stopped her electronic warfare games and started plotting attack vectors. Chris Martinez abandoned stealth tactics and began planning direct assault routes. Tony Rodriguez studied the hegemony positions with the focused intensity of a predator, choosing its moment to strike. Dr. Foster realized she was watching something the galaxy had never seen before. Humans pushed beyond diplomacy, beyond restraint, beyond the careful rules they usually followed. These were apex predators with all safety limits removed. Ryan opened a communication channel to the hegemony flagship. War Leader Grix's scaled face appeared on the screen, his yellow eyes gleaming with triumph. "Human vessel," Grix hissed. "You cannot hide forever. Surrender now and I will make your death quick." "You made a mistake," Ryan said calmly. "You hurt innocent people. Now the gloves come off." Grix laughed, a harsh sound like grinding metal. "One small ship against my fleet? You cannot win." "We don't need to win," Ryan replied. "We just need to hunt." The channel closed. Grix stared at the empty screen, feeling a chill despite his species' cold blood. There had been something in the human's voice, something that triggered deep survival instincts he didn't know he possessed. What happened next entered galactic history as the Kepler incident. Military academies would study it for generations, trying to understand how one human crew had destroyed an entire hegemony fleet, using nothing but skill, cunning, and the kind of focused aggression that made humans the most dangerous predators in known space. The humans didn't attack like a military force. They hunted like a pack of wolves. Alex Turner, a former Navy SEAL who served as the ship's tactical officer, coordinated the assault. His partner was Sam Rivers, an Army Ranger who had joined the Space Service after years of combat operations on Earth. Together, they turned the Pathfinder into something the galaxy had never seen, a warship that thought like a living predator. The first strike came from the asteroid belt. Megan had programmed a mining charge to look like debris on hegemony sensors. When the flagship moved to investigate reports of human activity, the charge detonated against their hull. The damage was minimal, but the psychological effect was devastating. The humans had struck from nowhere and vanished again. Chris Martinez used his wilderness skills to navigate impossible courses through the asteroid field. The Pathfinder moved like a mountain cat, using terrain that would destroy larger ships. They appeared behind hegemony vessels, struck fast, and disappeared before return fire could find them. But the real breakthrough came when Nicole Adams joined the crew. She was a tracker and survival expert who had been studying tender culture on the planet below. When the bombardment began, she had been evacuated to the Pathfinder. Now she brought knowledge that would change everything. "The tender aren't as helpless as we thought," Nicole reported. "They've been watching the hegemony ships and learning their patterns. They can't fight, but they can observe." Using tender observations from the surface, Tony Rodriguez built a complete picture of hegemony fleet movements. The aliens had no idea they were being watched by thousands of pairs of eyes from the planet below. Every ship position, every patrol route, every change in formation was reported to the humans. The hunters had become the hunted, and they didn't even know it. Pete Johnson, a hunting guide who had joined the crew as a civilian advisor, suggested a tactic that made Alex Turner smile with grim appreciation. "We don't try to fight 12 ships at once," Pete said. "We separate them, make them chase us one at a time into ground we've chosen." It was a classic persistence hunting strategy. Exhaust the prey by making them run, then pick them off when they were tired and isolated. The plan worked perfectly. Using false signals and electronic decoys, Megan lured individual hegemony ships away from the main fleet. Chris guided them into asteroid mazes where larger vessels couldn't maneuver. Alex and Sam struck with surgical precision, disabling engines and weapons before vanishing again. Laura Bell, a wilderness photographer who documented the battle, would later say it was like watching wolves hunt elk. The humans never fought fair. They used every advantage, exploited every weakness, and showed no mercy to an enemy that had chosen to attack civilians. One by one, the hegemony ships were disabled or destroyed. Their crews found themselves trapped in a maze of rock and ice, hunted by an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. The psychological pressure was overwhelming. These were soldiers who had conquered worlds, reduced to jumping at shadows and firing at empty space. War leader Grix watched his fleet dissolve around him. Ships went silent or reported catastrophic damage before losing contact entirely. His communications were filled with panicked reports of impossible maneuvers and attacks that came from nowhere. "How many ships are hunting us?" demanded his second-in-command. "One," Grix replied, his voice hollow with disbelief. "One human ship with a crew of 8. The final confrontation came when only the flagship remained." Grix, desperate and furious, made a last attempt to destroy the tender homeworld. He ordered his remaining weapons to target population centers directly. That's when the humans showed what they were truly capable of. The Pathfinder emerged from the asteroid field like an avenging angel, but instead of weapons fire, they used something far more terrifying: pure skill. Chris Martinez piloted the ship through a bombardment pattern that should have been impossible to survive. He threaded between energy beams, used the flagship's own size against it, and brought the humans into close range. Alex Turner and Sam Rivers led a boarding action that became legendary. Using techniques learned in Earth's most dangerous combat zones, they moved through the hegemony ship like ghosts. They didn't just fight the enemy crew, they hunted them through their own corridors. Nicole Adams used her tracking skills to predict where defenders would position themselves. Pete Johnson applied hunting tactics to urban combat, finding routes that surprised enemies who thought they knew their own ship. Laura Bell documented everything, creating a record that would terrify other species for generations. The hegemony crew had never faced anything like this. These humans moved with the coordinated precision of a pack, anticipating each other's actions, covering each other's movements, striking from unexpected angles. They used the ship's environment against its own crew, turning familiar corridors into hunting grounds. Within 2 hours, the flagship was under human control. War leader Grix found himself facing Captain Ryan Hayes in his own command center. The human's eyes held something that made the alien leader's blood freeze. "Your crew will be returned to hegemony space," Ryan said quietly. "You will tell them what happened here. You will tell them that humans protect innocence, and you will tell them that anyone who threatens civilians will face the same fate you face today." Grix nodded frantically. He had seen what humans could do when pushed beyond their limits. The stories he would tell would become cautionary tales told in whispers throughout hegemony space. As the surviving hegemony ships limped away, the crew of the Pathfinder looked down at the tender homeworld. The damage was extensive, but the civilization survived. The gentle beings below had no idea how close they had come to extinction, or that a single human crew had saved them from it. Dr. Foster sent her report to the Galactic Council that night. Her words would reshape how every species in known space viewed humanity. "Today I witnessed human predators with all restraints removed. They didn't fight like soldiers or hunt like animals. They hunted like humans, with intelligence, patience, and the kind of focused lethality that makes them the apex predators of their homeworld. Any species that threatens human civilians should understand. You are not facing just another predator. You are facing the most dangerous hunters in the galaxy, and they have chosen to use their skills to protect the innocent." The message was received across hundreds of worlds. From that day forward, no one would mistake human restraint for weakness. The galaxy had learned what happened when Earth's apex hunters decided to hunt back. 6 months after the Kepler incident, Dr. Rachel Green sat in her laboratory aboard the research station New Frontiers. As humanity's leading xenopsychologist, she had been tasked with something unprecedented: helping former hegemony scientists understand what had happened to their fleet. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same species that had tried to commit genocide was now asking humans to help them understand human behavior. But Rachel believed in the power of knowledge to prevent future conflicts. If the galaxy was going to coexist with humanity, everyone needed to understand what made humans unique. Her primary research partner was Dr. Veltar, a former hegemony military scientist who had been present during the fleet's destruction. The tall insectoid alien still showed signs of trauma from the experience. His compound eyes would dart nervously whenever humans moved too quickly, and he jumped at unexpected sounds. I have studied the tactical records from the battle, Veltar said, his translator rendering his chittering voice into careful English. Your species used impossible maneuvers, predicted our actions with supernatural accuracy, and coordinated attacks across vast distances. We need to understand these abilities to defend against them. Rachel smiled gently. You're still thinking about this wrong. You're looking for military secrets or advanced technology. The real answer is much simpler and much more complex. She activated a holographic display showing human evolution over millions of years. Let me tell you a story about persistence hunting. The images showed early humans on the African savanna, chasing animals across endless plains. Not with speed or strength, but with endurance and intelligence, running for hours under the blazing sun until their prey collapsed from exhaustion. Your scientists classified us as predators, and they were right, Rachel explained. But they didn't understand what kind of predators we are. Most species hunt with overwhelming force or perfect ambush. Humans developed something different. We became pursuit predators. Veltar studied the ancient humans tracking antelope across the grasslands. But pursuit predators are inefficient. They expend enormous energy for uncertain results. Exactly, Rachel said, which meant we had to become something no other predator had ever been. We had to become smart enough to make it work. She showed him brain scans comparing human intelligence to other species. We developed pattern recognition that could track prey across days and hundreds of miles. We learned to cooperate in ways that let us surround and isolate targets. We became endurance runners who could outlast any prey on the planet. But most importantly, she continued, we developed empathy. Veltar's compound eyes focused sharply. Empathy? That is, not a predator trait. It is for persistence hunters, Rachel explained. To track something for days, you have to understand how it thinks. Where will it go when tired? When frightened? When protecting young? We became so good at reading other creatures that we started to care about them. She showed him videos of modern human hunters. Not the violent scenes Veltar expected, but patient observation, careful tracking, and genuine respect for prey animals. This is Kelly Wright, Rachel said, indicating a woman tracking deer through snow. She's been following this buck for 3 days. She knows his habits, his favorite feeding spots, his escape routes. She understands him better than his own family. And Matt Cooper here, she continued, showing a man studying elk behavior. He's an engineer who spends his vacations learning animal psychology. He can predict what an elk will do in any situation because he's spent years thinking like an elk. Veltar was beginning to understand. Your hunters, they become their prey mentally? In a way, yes. And that's where the empathy comes from. Once you truly understand something, it's hard not to care about it. Our best hunters became our best conservationists. Our most effective killers became our most dedicated protectors. Rachel showed him the transformation of human civilization. Hunters who became wildlife biologists, warriors who became peace negotiators, predators who chose to become guardians. But what does this have to do with military tactics? Veltar asked, still struggling to connect human evolution to the destruction of his fleet. Everything, Rachel replied. Your fleet was hunted by the same instincts that once tracked prey across continents. Captain Hayes and his crew used skills that humans have refined for millions of years. She replayed the battle from the human perspective, showing how Tony Rodriguez had tracked the hegemony ships like a hunter following animal trails, how Chris Martinez had used terrain knowledge to predict movement patterns, how the entire crew had worked together with the seamless coordination of a pack that had hunted together for years. You see, when your people threatened the tender, you triggered something ancient in human psychology. You attacked the innocent and defenseless. In human terms, you became the dangerous predator that needed to be stopped. Veltar watched the tactical displays with new understanding. They were not fighting us. They were hunting us. Exactly. And humans are very, very good at hunting. Rachel brought up communication records from the battle. Listen to how they talked to each other. No shouting, no panic, no wasted words. They coordinated like a pack that had hunted together for generations. The alien scientist studied the calm, efficient exchanges between crew members. Even in the heat of battle, the humans had maintained the patient, methodical approach of persistence hunters. But why show restraint? Veltar asked. Your species could have destroyed our entire fleet. Why capture instead of kill? Because that's what separates us from simple predators, Rachel explained. Humans learned something unique in our evolutionary history. The best way to stay at the top of the food chain is to make sure there's still a food chain. She showed him examples of human conservation efforts, former warships converted to research vessels, military units retrained as disaster relief forces, weapons technology adapted for peaceful purposes. We discovered that our predator instincts work best when combined with what you might call guardian instincts. We protect what we understand, and we understand what we hunt. Veltar was silent for a long time, processing this information. Finally, he spoke. So when humans hunt, they are also protecting? Often, yes. When your fleet threatened the tender, human pack instincts kicked in. The tender became part of our territory, our responsibility. Attacking them was like attacking human young. Rachel showed him videos of human families, communities working together, strangers helping in emergencies. We're persistence hunters who learn to apply our hunting skills to protection. We track down threats to our pack, whether that pack is our family, our community, or innocent aliens on a distant world. The final piece of the puzzle came when Rachel introduced Veltar to some of the humans who had fought in the battle. Alex Turner and Sam Rivers spoke about their military training, but more importantly about why they fought. It's not about being aggressive, Alex explained. It's about being protective. Every skill I learned as a soldier, I learned to defend people who couldn't defend themselves. Sam nodded in agreement. Humans are dangerous because we choose to be dangerous only when necessary. But when someone threatens innocence, all that restraint disappears. We become what we need to become. Veltar asked the question that had haunted him for months. How do we defend against human hunters? Alex and Sam exchanged glances. Simple, Alex said. Don't threaten innocence. Don't attack the defenseless. Don't become something that needs to be hunted. Humans aren't looking for fights, Sam added. We're looking for solutions. Cooperate with us and you'll find we're the best allies you could ask for. But threaten what we protect. He didn't need to finish. Veltar had seen what happened when humans decided something needed protection. As the research project concluded, Dr. Rachel Green compiled her findings into a report that would reshape galactic civilization. Her conclusions were simple but profound. Humans were not just predators. They were persistence hunters who had evolved empathy, cooperation, and restraint as hunting tools. These same traits made them uniquely suited to be protectors of the innocent and defenders of the weak. The galaxy faced a choice. They could see humans as a threat to be contained, which would inevitably lead to conflict with Earth's apex hunters. Or they could recognize humans as the guardians they had chosen to become, and benefit from the protection of the most skilled predators in known space. The choice, Dr. Green noted, would determine whether humanity's hunting instincts were directed toward protection or elimination of threats. Most species chose protection. The Terra Accords were signed 1 year after the Kepler incident. Ambassador Kate Morrison, who had survived that first disastrous meeting, now stood before a very different galactic council. The aliens understood what they were dealing with now. Humans were predators, yes, but they were predators who had chosen to hunt only those who threatened the innocent. The signing ceremony took place on the same station where the first meeting had nearly ended in disaster. Kethval, now much wiser about human nature, presented the final documents. The Galactic Alliance formally recognizes humanity as the premier peacekeeping force in known space, he announced. Not because you are the most aggressive species, but because you are predators who chose civilization over conquest.